The city slept under a thick blanket of fog, the streets silent except for the occasional echo of a distant carriage or a lone footstep. In the heart of the city stood the Devereaux mansion, a fortress of black stone and iron gates rumored to be cursed, yet full of beauty that made it impossible to look away. Inside, the chandeliers glimmered like frozen stars, their light bouncing off walls decorated with generations of portraits, each face watching as though judging the living. Isolde walked down the grand hall, her hands lightly brushing the polished wood of the banisters. She was nervous, though she tried not to show it. Today was the day she would marry Lucien Devereaux, a man whose name carried both fear and respect throughout the city. The thought made her heart beat faster, not out of love but out of uncertainty. She did not know him, yet he was about to become her life. Lucien stood at the far end of the hall, tall and impossibly composed. His dark eyes scanned her with a calm that felt dangerous. He was the kind of man who could silence a room with a look. Yet in that quiet, he seemed to hold secrets that no one dared to guess. "You'll leave after the wedding," he said softly, his voice low but certain as if it carried the weight of an unbreakable promise. Isolde stopped mid-step. The words were meant to reassure her, but they did something else. They made the air between them heavier, charged with tension. She wanted to ask him why, to demand answers, but the way he looked at her made it impossible. There was power in his presence, a quiet authority that reminded her that the Devereaux name was more than just legacy. It was a cage, one she was about to enter willingly, or not. I don't know what to say," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "You only need to walk forward." The wedding was arranged not out of love but necessity. Isolde's family had been threatened by rival factions, and the Devereaux bloodline was rumored to carry a curse that could either protect her or destroy her. No one truly understood the curse, only that it was dangerous, tied to Lucien in ways that made him both a savior and a threat. As the day went on, Isolde tried to keep her composure. Servants moved quietly around her, arranging flowers and lighting candles. Outside, the city seemed to shiver under the weight of the coming night. When she finally approached Lucien, standing near the altar draped in black velvet and gold embroidery, her heart pounded against her chest. Lucien extended a gloved hand. "Shall we?" he asked, his tone polite. Yet there was an edge to it, as if this was not just a question but a test. Isolde took his hand, and in that moment, a strange shiver passed through her. It was not fear exactly, but a sense of connection, sharp and unsettling. The church echoed with silence as they walked forward. Every step seemed to echo in the walls, like the house itself was watching them, waiting to see what they would do. The ceremony was quiet and formal. Lucien's hands were steady, his voice calm as he recited vows that felt both eternal and binding. Isolde repeated the words because she had to, not because she understood the depth of what they meant. Outside, the sky darkened, clouds swirling as though mirroring the tension that bound them together. After the ceremony, the reception was a strange mix of celebration and unease. Guests whispered behind hands, eyes darting toward the newlyweds, some out of curiosity, some out of fear. Lucien's reputation preceded him, and even in moments of joy, shadows clung to him like a second skin. Isolde found herself wandering the halls of the mansion later that evening, trying to make sense of the life she had entered. Candles flickered in sconces along the walls, and the portrait seemed to follow her every move. She stopped before a painting of a man with a striking resemblance to Lucien, his eyes dark and stormy. Something about it felt familiar, almost like a warning. "You should not wander alone," Lucien said from the doorway. She had not heard him approach. His presence filled the room, and even in the dim light he seemed larger than life. I needed air," Isolde replied. Her voice was steady, though her stomach twisted with unease. Lucien stepped closer, his shadow stretching across the floor, mingling with hers. "This house, it does not forgive mistakes," he said quietly, "nor does my family. You must understand, Isolde. Once you are here, there is no simple return to the life you had before." She swallowed, feeling the weight of his words. I understand," she whispered, though part of her did not. Over the following days, Isolde began to notice strange occurrences. At night, whispers floated through the halls, words she could not comprehend. Shadows seemed to linger longer than they should. And sometimes when she looked in mirrors, she caught glimpses of figures that disappeared the moment she blinked. Lucian noticed these moments, yet never fully explained them. He only said, "The house remembers, and so do those who live in it. You must be careful." Despite her fear, Isolde felt herself drawn to him. Their interactions were charged with unspoken tension. He would appear suddenly to protect her from small dangers, offering a hand or a look that said more than words ever could. She resisted the pull, telling herself she could not trust him, but the pull only grew stronger. One night, as rain lashed against the mansion windows, Lucian approached her quietly. "Do you feel it?" he asked. His voice was low, almost hesitant, as if admitting the truth was painful even for him. Isolde looked at him, unsure what he meant.
"Feel what?"
"The darkness," he said. "It is a part of my family, my life, and it will touch you as well, whether you want it to or not. The closer you come, the more you are tied to it. There is no way to avoid it," she shivered. "Then why am I still here?" Lucian studied her, his expression unreadable. "Because even in darkness there is a choice. You can fight it or you can accept it. But either way, you are part of this now, and I will not let you go." His words made her heart ache in ways she could not explain. She wanted to run, to escape the mansion, the curse, and him, but a part of her could not leave. There was something in his eyes, something human beneath the dangerous exterior that made her believe he might not be entirely a monster. The tension between them grew each day. Lucian's control was absolute, yet he allowed moments of tenderness that confused Isolde. A brush of his hand when he handed her a candle, a glance that lingered too long, a quiet word meant only for her. Every small gesture made the promise he had given. "You'll leave after the wedding," feel both distant and impossible. Then, on the night of their first formal gathering as husband and wife, everything changed. The mansion's halls were alive with whispers, shadows twisting unnaturally along the walls. Guests laughed and danced, oblivious to the danger lurking nearby. Isolde felt a chill run down her spine. Something was coming. Something old and powerful. Lucian appeared at her side, his presence grounding her. "Stay close," he murmured, his hand brushing hers. "Whatever comes, we face it together." Before she could respond, a shadow detached itself from the wall, moving toward them with intent. It was dark, fluid, and alive, a remnant of the curse that had haunted the Devereaux family for generations. The guest did not notice it, caught up in the joy of the evening, but Isolde saw it. She realized in a flash that the promise of leaving after the wedding was never hers to keep. Lucian's eyes darkened as he stepped in front of her, ready to confront the shadow. "You cannot hide from this," he said, his voice firm but protective. "Nor can you run from what we are." Isolde felt a surge of fear, but also something else, an unexpected strength. She did not yet understand it, but she felt the pull of destiny, of connection, of power she had never known. The mansion seemed to hold its breath as the shadow approached, and in that moment, she understood. Her life had changed forever, and Lucian, the man who had promised she could leave, was not letting her go, not from the mansion, not from the curse, not from him. End of Part 1. Cliffhanger. Isolde stands beside Lucienne, facing a shadow born of the family curse. The promise of leaving after the wedding is gone, and the night whispers that their fates are forever entwined. The storm had passed, leaving the city wet and glistening under the pale light of a rising moon. Inside the Devereaux mansion, the air still hummed with the remnants of the shadow that had attacked them the night before. Candles flickered as if unsettled by unseen breath, and the portraits along the walls seemed to lean closer, watching, waiting. Isolde sat in the grand hall, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to steady her breathing. The events of the previous night had changed everything. She was no longer just a guest in the mansion, or a bride in a carefully arranged marriage. She was part of something larger, something dangerous, and she felt the weight of it pressing down on her chest. Lucian entered quietly, his coat damp from the lingering storm outside. He looked at her, his dark eyes softer now, the hardness from before softened by concern. "Are you all right?" he asked. His voice was steady, calm, yet underneath it ran a current of worry. I think so," Isolde replied, though she was not entirely sure herself. But what was that thing? That shadow? Lucian sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "It is part of the curse that haunts my family. It is tied to anyone who becomes close to me. Anyone I love. It tests loyalty, courage, and the heart. Many before us have failed. Isolde's stomach twisted. Then am I doomed? Not doomed, he corrected, stepping closer. But bound. The choice is ours, together or apart. And if we face it together, we may survive. But we must trust each other completely. The weight of his words settled heavily upon her. She wanted to step back, to flee from the responsibility, the danger, and the uncertainty. And yet she could not. There was something in Lucian, something raw and real that anchored her. She felt herself drawn to him despite the fear. Over the next days, life in the mansion became a tense balance between normalcy and threat. Servants whispered of strange happenings, footsteps in empty halls, portraits tilting on their own, and shadows that lingered longer than they should. Guests were warned not to explore certain wings of the mansion, and even the grand ballroom seemed to hum with unspoken energy. Lucian and Isolde spent long hours together, learning the nuances of each other's presence. He taught her about the mansion, the bloodline, and the dangers they faced. She taught him about herself, her strength, and her courage, qualities he had not expected, yet came to respect deeply. One evening they walked along the garden terrace, the moonlight casting silver shadows over wet stone. Lucian stopped, looking out over the city below. "Do you ever wonder," he asked quietly, "why some people are chosen for love and curse together?" Isolde met his gaze, unsure what he meant. I suppose some destinies are bound by forces we cannot understand." "Exactly," he said. "We are bound, not by choice, not entirely. But it is our courage, our heart, that will define how we survive." She felt a shiver run down her spine, but it was not from fear. It was from the awareness of the closeness between them, the tension that had grown into something more than mere obligation. She wanted to look away, to deny it, but she could not. She was drawn to him, as if some invisible thread had tied them together. Then, without warning, the mansion trembled. The air grew thick, charged with energy. Shadows began to writhe along the walls, forming shapes too dark and fluid to be anything natural. The curse had not rested. It had returned, stronger and more purposeful. Lucian immediately stepped in front of her, his stance protective. "Stay close," he said. "Whatever comes, do not turn away." Isolde nodded, her fear tempered by determination. She realized now that running was not an option. She would face this darkness with him, because running meant abandoning not only him, but a part of herself she was only beginning to understand. The shadow surged forward, its form twisting and curling like black smoke. Lucian met it with a calm authority, placing a hand on the cold stone floor and muttering words in a language Isolde did not understand. Light flickered at his fingertips, cutting through the darkness with silver threads. The shadow recoiled, then surged again, more aggressively than before. Isolde felt a strange sensation in her chest, as if the curse was touching her as well. She struggled to focus, but then, instinctively, she extended her hand toward the shadow. To her shock, a faint glow appeared in her palm, warm and steady. The shadow recoiled again, as if her presence weakened it. Lucian looked at her, eyes wide but approving. "You have power too," he said. "I knew it, but now you feel it. We are stronger together than apart. Remember that." Together they pushed the shadow back, their combined strength forming a barrier of light and determination. Slowly the darkness diminished, leaving only the still, heavy air of the mansion. Breathing heavily, Isolde turned to Lucian. I did not know I could do that." "You were always capable," he replied, taking her hand gently. "Sometimes it just takes the right moment and the right person to bring it out." The intensity of the moment left them both shaken. Yet amidst the fear and adrenaline, there was an undeniable connection growing between them. They were no longer simply bride and groom or protector in charge. They were partners, bound by circumstance, courage, and now, mutual understanding. Days passed, and the mansion slowly returned to a fragile calm. The guests left, either frightened or awed by the events, and the halls seemed quieter, though still haunted by echoes of what had happened. Lucian and Isolde spent long nights in conversation, exploring the mansion and their newfound abilities. Each discovery brought them closer, their trust deepening in ways neither had expected. Lucian revealed parts of his past, the weight of his family, the curse that had haunted him for generations, and the loneliness that came with power. Isolde shared her fears, her dreams, and the strength she had found in herself through their trials. One evening, as they stood on the terrace watching the moon rise, Lucian turned to her, his expression serious. I said you could leave after the wedding, he murmured. But some promises are never yours to keep. Isolde's heart ached, but not with fear. She understood now that leaving was never truly an option, not because she was trapped, but because she had chosen to stay. She chose him and the life, power, and danger that came with it. I will not leave, she said softly, stepping closer. Not now. Not ever. A faint smile touched Lucian's lips, rare and genuine. Then we face this together, he said. Whatever comes, we are bound. And that bond? It is stronger than any curse. Their hands found each other, fingers interlacing. For the first time, the mansion felt less like a prison and more like a place of possibility. The curse had tested them, the shadows had challenged them, and the danger had threatened to break them, but they had survived. Together. And yet, as they stood in the moonlight, neither could ignore the lingering sense of unease. The city beyond the mansion walls was quiet, but they knew it held its own threats. Rivals, whispers, and darkness waited for any sign of weakness. And the curse would never rest, but in that moment they had each other. And that was enough to face whatever came next. Lucian leaned closer, his voice a low whisper. No matter what the world throws at us, no matter the curse, no matter the shadows.
You are mine.
And I am yours. Isolde felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of fear, hope, and something she had never felt before. Belonging. And I am yours, she replied. The night deepened around them, shadows stretching across the mansion walls, yet they did not retreat. For the first time, darkness seemed less threatening, as if acknowledging that its power was no match for the bond they had formed. In the quiet aftermath of chaos, a new understanding settled between them. Love, trust, and courage were not separate from fear and danger. They were intertwined. The curse that had haunted Lucian's family could not be erased, but it could be faced. Together they could endure anything. And though the future remained uncertain, one truth was clear. Neither would ever leave the other. The promise of freedom after the wedding had been replaced by a stronger truth. They were bound, not by obligation but by choice. And in the shadows of the Devereaux mansion, a new chapter began. End of Part 2. Cliffhanger. Though the immediate danger has passed, the curse remains. Shadows still linger in the corners of the mansion and city. Lucian and Isolde's bond is unbreakable, but their journey has just begun, leaving readers eager to discover what trials the future holds for them.